So no matter who you are, no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. So if you're new here, I would appreciate it if you would come up and introduce yourself to me. After this gathering, we'll hang around. And if you have any questions about the content of today's presentation, feel free to ask
I knew you
Holly,
were going to say that.
And she can answer anything with all of her multiple disciplinary credentials.
Questions, ask me. Criticisms, let you know.
If you have criticisms, tell me. That would be better. So we begin in silence. It's a way that we affirm our belief that we reside in the heart of sacred mystery, and that this mystery seeks to find expression through who we are and how we live, how we interact with each other, how we speak to each other. So if it helps to close your eyes, you can do that. May grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in our mouths today and in our speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding, and may grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may we have eyes to see and the courage to walk the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And may what we do here in this gathering today benefit all creation. Amen. So I want to speak to those of you who are watching online. I tried to get some idea about how many of you there are. Almost as many as are here in this room, I think. So here's the deal. I got a question this week from one of you who said, is it possible for us to have a discussion group online like the people who show up in person have a discussion group after class? And the answer to that is it depends on whether that's what you want or not. If you do, there are several things that you can do. One, I'm going to mention this, although Tim said there are other ways that you can do this too, through the website, through the Ordinary Life website. But tomorrow you could call the church's number, 713-528-0527, speak to Gail Jury. She'll take your name down. Or you could send an email to St. Paul, info@stpaulshouston.org. Eventually that information will get to me. So let's say within the next 72 hours, and that will cover those of you who watch this later on YouTube. But be careful, because YouTube has algorithms that will suck you down rabbit holes, and pretty soon you'll be watching magic shows.
Like that's ever happened.
At least that's my experience. So if you want to do that, if you will, in the next 72 hours, follow one of these paths or the website to let me know, and I will get you connected with a guy named Tom Driscoll, who is in Minnesota. Tom, shout out to you for suggesting this and being willing to host a discussion group for those of people who are interested.
Cool.
That's it.
Yeah. So before we totally begin, I need a tiny announcement, or I don't know what it is. Warning? Last night I had a dream that two things happened. That we were presenting and Bill fell dead asleep while we were presenting. And secondly, that one of you got up and poured a cup of beer out in front of us while teaching. And I want to remind you that there are no alcoholic beverages welcome in church. And second, that I've got this little poker in case you do fall asleep, okay? Just letting you know. That should take care of that.
What do you use this for?
Marshmallows.
What?
Marshmallows.
I'm not a marshmallow.
You kind of are.
That's a great dream. You know what Carl Jung would say about the beer?
What?
It's a pouring of the Spirit.
Sure, yeah.
Seriously, beer is spirit. I wondered when I was a kid and growing up, and I would go around where they would sell, they would have stores that sold wine and spirits. And I always wondered, why do they call it spirit? And then I read Carl Jung.
Yeah, there you go.
Alcoholism is a misguided drive to connect with spirit. That's true. That's what Jung believed anyway. Okay. So,
Okay.
we are beginning today in here a series on the Sermon on the Mount, but more specifically on the Beatitudes. You'll find out why I really wanted Holly to do this with me today in a moment. Because there's a golden thread thing that is behind this. That's Robert Johnson's thing. Mm-hmm. As you know, I am using this book, Stephen Mitchell's The Gospel According to Jesus, as a roadmap to guide these teachings. And when I saw that this was what was coming up in this book, I remembered that twice before in here, I have done the Beatitudes. Once a long, long time ago. It is embarrassing to go back and read that material now. And then Holly and I did the Beatitudes during COVID, when we sat here and spoke to an empty room.
Yeah.
And we thought, when we started, well, we'll be doing this for a couple of weeks.
And this turned out to be August, like 6 months later, after we thought it would just be
How long did we do it?
2 years almost.
2 years?
Yeah. 18 months. Yeah.
No wonder I fell asleep.
Right. Give me my poker.
She'll have more to say about that. One of the reasons I wanted Holly here today is because our institutions and our country are suffering from an enormous lack of the feminine, of the anima energy. And you'll hear more about that in a minute. We are being engulfed with waves of misogyny. And it's harmful. It's like, and I got this line from Joan Chittister, it is like trying to walk with one leg. There's part of us that is essential that we are not using to navigate our personal and corporate lives. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason I'm excited about doing the Beatitudes is I think we need to put as much energy into getting these posted on the walls of our public schools as the Ten Commandments. My vision is they would cover the Ten Commandments so that when people saw them. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful if in our courtrooms it said, "Blessed are the merciful"? Mm-hmm. And wouldn't it be wonderful in our newly renamed Department of War, it would say, "Blessed are the peacemakers"? Mm-hmm. And now keep in mind that all of this is being done under the rubric of a Christian nation, what you see taking place. So the teachings of Jesus do not point to a future world. They are realities to be embraced and enjoyed and celebrated right here and right now. And the good news is that they tell us that even in this crazy, complicated world, with all of its blatant dishonesty, injustice, and all the pain, fear, and trauma these provide, nonetheless, we can find an experience of the sacred. So these sayings constitute a radical vision for blessing and belonging. So we can know, even though it doesn't seem so at the time, that we're on the right track when we pursue things like peace and justice and the things that are mentioned in the Beatitudes. It's in these teachings that Jesus admonishes his followers, which we claim to be part of, be a bright light in a dark world. That's a paraphrase, but it's an accurate one.
Mm-hmm. It's funny now, given what you said about kind of balancing with masculine and feminine, that the masculine representation of me fell asleep in the dream while giving this talk.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Well, I think that on the part of many of us, what has fallen asleep is the sense of any potency, which the masculine energy can provide.
Which we really need.
We really need.
Yeah.
Potency is not the same as being a bully. Right.
Power is not the same as force.
Right.
Yeah. So we both reread what we wrote in 2020, thinking, well, maybe this will inform what we talk about today, and then we totally changed it. Thinking, we have something new to say now, and I suppose, though, a return to the Beatitudes is one application of what it means to study the living word. It evolves, it changes, it applies as it needs to in our social system. It doesn't stay the same, in other words. And I believe we're all in some way changed since 2020. A lot was going on then, a lot is going on now. And we stumbled through one of the most globally tumultuous times in recent history. We're in one of those times again, maybe continuously. And we grappled together to try and figure out something wise or hopeful or challenging to say then. And we're trying again today. I want to lift up an image that Bill's used several times in here, that we've talked about, that sticks with me, which also references the power and the importance of repetition. I'm enamored on my own, and probably because it was planted in here, with the image of a spiral. From the large to the small, from the esoteric to the exoteric, the physical to the sort of spiritual. The spiral, as I've said in here before, is one of the most fundamental shapes of life. So our galaxy is the shape of a spiral. Weather patterns are the shape of a spiral. A snail shell, our DNA, even our breath is a spiral. And it's also the shape of our spiritual lives. One of my favorite artists, some of you may have heard of her, Hilma af Klint, she actually left a note in her will to say, do not distribute my artworks to the public until after I am dead, and she gave a very specific date. So we didn't know her artwork existed until the 80s. But she was a woman making really symbolic and deeply spiritual works when women were not getting credit for making abstract symbolic works. She too was obsessed with the spiral. So the spiral often feels repetitive, right? It's a continuous movement of going up and down. When we go down into the depths because of grief or loss or disorientation, both personal and collective. And it's dark. We might feel alone. We might even feel close to death, and certainly confused. These are maybe brushes with our own humanity, with our own mortality. But the dark is also a fecund place. It's really a germinating space. And it's mysterious and gives new life. So it has the potential to open us up to something much deeper and bigger than the self. So we stay down there, we get the wisdom we need to get, then we ascend up the spiral stair, gradually coming up into the light. And in the light, we have more wisdom from the depth to help us get through. I think I picture it like a bear coming out of hibernation. We kind of shake ourselves off, roll around in the dirt a little bit, and roll over for a tummy rub, I don't know. But the light is delicious after we've been in the dark. But our moments in these depths make the light so much sweeter, and our moments in the light give us stamina for when we will inevitably return to the dark. So we're there again. Each time we ascend and descend, we go higher and we go lower.
You know, if I had not vowed never to mention another book in here again,
You might say.
I would mention right now Karen Armstrong's book, The Spiral Staircase, but I'm not going to do that.
Okay, don't do that. Pretend you've never heard it. The point is, we've been here before. Not exactly here, but we've been in the depths. In 2020, we were in it. It's 2025 and we are in it. So we've gathered some tools in the last 5 years to apply some wisdom for this time. I think it's really synchronous that the Beatitudes found us again at this time. We're in what philosopher Emile Durkheim called a phase of anomie, which is a state of normlessness. We're in a time when social mores and civility are not winning. The threads that make sense to pull on are directives not for how we should believe in the world, but how we should be in the world. We're turning towards how we might better love one another when it feels like we're really being consumed by the fires of division. So I'll focus primarily today on the importance of compassion and justice as the underlying values of the Beatitudes. And we're going to read them in tandem through the words of Eugene Peterson in his interpretation of the Bible, The Message.
And I'll say this probably several times. Compassion and justice come from the anima.
Yep.
From the feminine, not from the masculine. You know, Holly, most of these people read these today in their daily spiritual practice. I'm not sure there's any. Okay, we'll
Okay, we should do it. Yeah, just in case. Just in case y'all didn't do your homework.
I'll go. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and God's rule.
Still can't get away from that his, can we? You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you.
You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you found yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought.
You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. God is food and drink and the best meal you'll ever eat.
You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for.
You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and your heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world.
You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family.
You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom.
Keep going.
Keep going. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit me. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort and they are uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer even. For though they don't like it, I do, and all of heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble.
And this last one, which I really think is Holly's favorite, let me tell you why you're here.
It is.
You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out God's flavors on this earth. So, as I said, the reason I wanted Holly to be here today is that the qualities of the Beatitudes are mostly from the feminine side of our personality. Compassion and power, what I call strong compassion, which you'll talk about in a minute. You know, it's consistent with all faith traditions across the spectrum that women are oppressed more than men. And the people in these traditions will claim this is just how God wants it. And Christianity is no exception. Charlie Kirk, whose assassination was a tragedy, he was not hesitant in saying that a woman's place was in subservience to her husband. I am not sandbagging Holly when I'm about to say what I'm going to say. But I wrote in the text as we were working on it this week, maybe Holly can explain why a woman would agree to that. However, there is a certain kind of male who will never stop believing that God prefers him over women. They're running our country. So once again, it is ironic that those in our culture who most vocally claim to be Christian seem to overlook the fact that Jesus violated almost everything they hold dear. He included women in his ministry. He had public conversations with them, which was something that was forbidden at the time. He had women disciples. A woman was the first witness, according to the narrative we have, to the resurrection. Now, while I'm on this, let me just say that what is currently called by Christian nationalists a Christian biblical marriage, you cannot find in the Bible. During biblical times, marriage was a business arrangement between a woman's parents and the man that she married. It was a business deal. Marriage was not made a sacrament in the church until the 15th century. Prior to that, Christians didn't think about marriage as something the church had to regulate, bless, define, or manage. So the first time in Scripture, some Christians claim to value so highly, that the first time that Jesus in these documents says, I am the Messiah, he says it to a woman, not to a man, not to his disciples. And he said that in having a conversation that with a woman that Jewish law required, had he been caught, he would have been stoned to death. It is just amazing to me that misogynists say they follow this guy. So December Rose Waddleton, who's a woman you might want to look up on Google, she's amazing, African-American minister, said, Christianity is inherently sexist because Christianity didn't originate with Christ. Christianity is an institution of systems created by men for men. And because of this, women can only fit into roles and ranks that accommodate the minds and motives of men who created the system. I stopped referring to Martin Luther, the one who started the Reformation, as a hero, when I read how anti-Semitic he was, which was extraordinary. Here is what Martin Luther, the reformer, said about women. The word and works of God are quite clear, that women were made either to be wives or prostitutes. Stephen Wolfe, who wrote a book called The Case for Christian Nationalism, I think I need to read it so I would be informed, proudly says that under Christian nationalist rule, women can't be in charge because they are too empathetic and too inclusive. This is a quote. Only a male-dominated church can guarantee blasphemy is punished and atheism is crushed. Just think about it. If the Virgin Mary came back today, she could not celebrate Mass in the church that celebrates her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
isn't that ironic?
Yeah. You threw out a bit of a gauntlet that Holly can explain why any woman would agree to subservience.
Well, since you got your PhD,
That's
right.
Since I'm so clearly not subservient. So please know that I speak from my perspective. I may not have the answer, but I'll try to paint it with a broad brush as well as a kind of personal one. First, I want to distinguish subservience from service. Subservience is a willingness to obey unquestioningly, often at the expense of the self. And service is an act of assistance that empowers or uplifts another. Not to be confused. I don't think we really have a map for the powerful feminine on a collective level. We have, as our most kind of salient text around individuation, the hero's journey. And although it's a, wise pattern, it is specifically masculine, but it is called universal. Maureen Murdoch later, she was a student of Joseph Campbell's, offered us the heroine's journey as an alternative, suggesting that most of us, male and female alike, have separated from the feminine at a very early age because of the idealization of the father or the masculine as the path for success. And so at an early age, the feminine learns to quiet itself and follow the path of the male in order to find success. What we see then is a lot of females operating like males in the masculine to attain power. That doesn't mean that's not feminist. That's supplanting power with another kind of power, if that makes sense. So we might broadly be able to say that the feminine is in a deep state of sleep. Our examples of how to be in the world, even our developmental theories, Erik Erikson, Jean Piaget, Lawrence Kohlberg, all based on research of males and white males at that. And yet they are applied universally. We're creating the map in a way as we discover the terrain. And even Carl Jung, himself male, wrote in his collected works that the negative aspects of the mother or feminine archetype connect to that which is secretive, hidden, or dark. There's truth in that when it's secretive, hidden, or dark, it's not present, it's not up in the world, right? It's buried. It relates to the abyss, or perhaps the tendency to stay at that dark bottom of the spiral stair. It can be seductive, devouring, manipulative, and codependent. So I think what you're calling an agreement with subservience is the shadow feminine being the most present. I don't think that she's found her full expression. It's codependent, right? I would bet that we all have ways of being in that shadow because of how long and deep the patriarchy is, both its positive and negative aspects. The patriarchy is not all negative, but the difference between the way it gets expressed and the way the feminine gets expressed makes it come across as more negative. I want to be careful, though, because if we just talk about the feminine replacing the masculine, it's what I just said, that just becomes another version of power over. And I don't think that's helpful. Balance between the two looks more like power with, power shared. I think we, especially those who identify as female, have to engage in some active imagination with the positive aspects of the mother or feminine archetype to kind of figure out, where do we go from here? To get a bit more personal, I think that the positive aspects of the feminine are connected to intuition, wisdom, creativity, and transformation. In the Christ story, this is the death and rebirth cycle. She is comfortable with the birthing pains of the world, and she knows how to manage and heal and tend to them. It's the ability to tend to that pain without being consumed by it, without taking it on, that makes her powerful. And compassion is a central pillar of the teachings of Jesus, especially apparent here in the Beatitudes. And to understand it, I think we have to lean into something essentially feminine about ourselves. To understand it, we have to go beyond convention. Certainly as it pertains to the church and broadly as it relates to culture, I think we only have a partial understanding of God without delving into the feminine. So Hebrew scholars in this room might already know this, that compassion and womb share the same root. Raham, compassion, comes from Rahem, womb. So what a powerful image, that compassion arises from somewhere deep within, from the dark space, from the germinating space. Some of the qualities of compassion then are nourishment, life-giving, tenderness, and concern. But this is not a soft virtue. This is not just a there kind of virtue. That's what the more submissive feminine might say. It's just, bring them and I'll care for you. But it's also fierce. And this is important to me to get across, because what does a mother do when the children of her womb are suffering? She's ready to kill. She's fierce. It is not soft. She lifts cars off of children. She runs first headlong into a burning building. She stays up all night with a sick child. And she feeds the poor and the hungry wherever she goes. This is not soft. This is fierce. Marcus Borg writes that the feminine compassion may be felt as womb-like. This made me laugh. Whereas the masculine equivalent may be a deep stirring in the loins. Y'all do with that what you want. I think the point is it's felt deep within. But no matter where we feel it, compassion has both an outward face, attending to the world, and an inward face. As indicated in the Beatitudes, we must come to learn to love our whole selves, get our minds and hearts right in order to better love each other. It's inward and it's outward. Perhaps this is the essence of the inner child work, is to protect and nurture our own hurting little ones inside. Something our president has not done, and I suspect we are all kind of paying for that his inner child was not loved. Compassion, and I can have compassion for that. It has a certain edge to it, and it doesn't stop with just feeling. Compassion, when done right, moves us into action, and that's where it intersects with justice.
I think the most difficult thing for a man is to withdraw the projections that he makes onto a woman and to see her as a person. Because in our culture, men are taught to idealize and objectify women. And it's what little boys learn. The way that kids learn about sex and sexual stuff today is on their phones with pornography.
Oh my gosh, it's instant and everywhere. Yeah.
And this is terribly difficult to do, I remember a lecture there, this is not in our script. I remember a lecture.
This never happens.
And you made fun of me about that this week.
Did.
I remember a lecture that Robert Johnson gave in which he said that, what little boys, you often see little boys, even now in this culture, what they want to do is to be cowboys, not grown men. And he said, the cow is the symbol for the mother, the milk and all that.
The udders, yeah.
And what are so many people going to do today? They're going to go watch the Dallas Cowboys.
So I once bought I have 3 boys, as you know. I bought them a doll when they were little, thinking, okay, they can have trucks and they can have dolls and they can practice both. They used to strip this doll naked and turn its head around and leave it in these contorted positions, and then they'd bring it to me held by the neck. Mommy, you do it?
Fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. This poor doll. We gave him away.
Okay. I want, as we go forward through these teachings, for them to, I want to hit 3 consistent themes every Sunday in a different way. First, as you might expect, I want to deal with biblical literacy. There is no reputable biblical scholar who believes that one day Jesus went up on a mountain and gave a sermon. It's called the Sermon on the Mount, but it wasn't constructed that way. I don't know how many of you have seen The Chosen. I understand it's come out in a new series. I've seen the first 2. And in The Chosen, Matthew is shown helping Jesus write the Sermon on the Mount.
Just thinking, Jesus wrote his sermons on Wednesday, right? And delivered them on, Jesus wrote his sermons on Wednesday and delivered them on Sundays.
No, he delivered them on Saturday.
Oh, that's right, the Sabbath, yeah. Yeah.
So there are 2 versions of the Sermon on the Mount in the Christian collection. One is in Matthew, which is called the Sermon on the Mount, and in Luke, it's called the Sermon on the Plain. Now, which is it? Can't be both. So Matthew, whoever composed Matthew, taking various sayings and putting them together, wanted Jesus to be seen as the new Moses. Moses had a lot of mountaintop experiences. Moses went up on the mountain and got the 10 Commandments. Now, a lot of people don't remember the fact that when Moses came down the first time, he was really irritated with what the people had been doing while he was up there. So he took those 10 Commandments and threw them and broke them, and he had to go get others. Wouldn't it be wonderful to know what the first 10 were like? You know, return your library books on time or whatever they were. There are 5 major portions in what we call the Gospel of Matthew. They are to parallel the 5 books of the Torah. And so what we call the Sermon on the Mount replaces Moses going up and getting the 10 Commandments. They're in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. The Beatitudes are the first part of that.
This is what happens. I'm always like, where are you? I know where you are. Right there. Stop.
Well, I couldn't help but put my favorite meme about the Bible in here, where Jesus is sitting on the Sermon on the Mountain, and he's saying, now listen carefully, I don't want 4 different versions of this. Mm-hmm. It's really important to know the Bible. I mean, and you know, you don't have to do that work. You've got people who can teach it, but don't take it as a literal document that just, this is what happened. These are poetic, parabolic sayings that were not written with us in mind. Mm-hmm. So that's a historical context. To whom were these sayings first made? What did they hear in their context? Because Jesus is speaking to the most marginalized group in that society, which none of us is. There may be inner aspects of us that are, and we can speak to that. But what did he mean? What did they hear? Why did he choose to speak these particular things? Why were they so remembered? And some of these things we can't know for sure, but we can hypothesize. And that skill is getting better because of archaeology and more discovery and translation of ancient documents. And the third theme I want to hear strike over and over again is, what relevance do they have for us? Mm-hmm. What do they matter? For example, there's again no doubt in any scholar's mind that the original saying in the Beatitudes is, blessed are the poor, period. But early on, the church didn't like that. Mm-hmm. So it changed, it retranslated, it added to it, blessed are the poor in spirit. That way, you can keep your stuff.
That's right. I'm just thinking that. Oh, good.
and here's something that maybe you didn't know. Celibacy in the church, which didn't occur until the 11th century, didn't start for any other reason than property. Because when popes and priests who were married died, their stuff went to their families. And the church said, nah, we don't want that. We want, when you die, your stuff to come to us. So don't marry. That's where that came from. So I think that, in our culture, when people come to church or to anything, they want to hear something relevant. And what I think most of us mean when we say, I want something relevant, we want to hear something that's pleasing to us, something that reinforces our point of view, that takes us further along the path we want to travel. That's why most of us listen to newscasts that confirm what we already know. Bias confirmation is what we're looking for. Jesus had an entirely different definition of what was relevant. It was not what people wanted. It was what he thought they needed, what they could benefit from. And some took to it and some didn't. So, again, I want to say that when these sayings were first heard, they created this radical vision of blessing and belonging. Mm-hmm. And that's a key for what Jesus meant by the kingdom. And they constitute, and I got this from some scholar I read, it's not original with me, they constitute what we're calling a theological earthquake.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things about teaching with you is that you say to me often, I could never do this without notes. And yet you go off the notes all the time. You say, I keep you on your toes. Yeah. Anyways, the Beatitudes are a paradigm shift. That's to get you back on track. So we're offered a paradigm shift.
It just shows what a creative influence you have on me.
What's that?
That just shows what a creative influence you have on me.
You're finally getting the feminine.
About time.
Maybe I'm getting a little of the masculine. Anyway, so we have a paradigm shift in front of us, this way of operating in the world that rejects a top-down approach of the establishment and in favors of a ground-up kind of grassroots community approach. Alongside compassion, justice is the second prominent pillar of these teachings. And I just thought of this, I love the way that Claudia Rankine, she's a playwright, author, columnist, she writes in her one of her books, the title is Just Us. She spells justice as the phonetic, just us. She removes the I. So when we think about justice, I think Jesus actually had a totally different idea about it than how we have come to understand it. We tend to think of justice as it pertains to personal rights and laws, and how those personal rights and laws are applied to me. My biggest critique of our culture in this country is our fixation on hyper-individualism. It's a commitment that makes my right to bear arms more important than a child's safety in school. Or likewise, free speech generally protects the individual speaking rather than the ones who are receiving the harm by that speech. So in lieu of being careful, We've lost sight of an agreed upon ethic and a commitment to the public good. Imagine if our freedoms came with a measure of responsibility to one another. I love how the great spiritual teacher Lao Tzu says it. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character, it becomes your destiny. I think this ought to be like the asterisk, bolded, underlined, italicized footnote at the bottom of our First Amendment. To have freedom requires responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to each other. And what we say and do matters. When we can't understand that we are related to one another, we create societies driven by racism, sexism, really all the isms and phobias available, greed and retribution. Our commitment to individualism taints our understanding of justice. So when we relate to justice as a way to keep individuals in check, it remains rather thin, if not undergirded by substantive justice. The latter focuses on the laws themselves, not how they are applied, but whether the way they are written are equitable and fair. So we create a society, if we have substantive justice, that is good for all, which is what Jesus was about. He wanted a justice that actually challenged and changed systems, a justice with substance. I firmly believe that substantive justice restores us to ourselves and to community, whereas procedural justice separates. We need procedural justice. That is the application of the law, and that is a masculine approach. But when procedural justice loses sight of the feminine, the equitable and fair application of the law, then we're in binary thinking. We're in right-wrong thinking rather than, is this good for all? Jesus' dangerous dream meant individuals could thrive in communities just for being themselves. Full stop. No qualifications. Imagine that. If we take his sermon seriously, it not only calls us to be merciful and peaceful, two characteristics of substantive justice, but also to grieve in the face of injustice, to mourn when things aren't right or aren't as they ought to be. A womb-like compassion is required to really uphold substantive justice. It ensures that love is an actual living, breathing, doing thing, not just a sentiment. I see this as actually the marriage of the empowered feminine and the empowered masculine. The two are working together. I love this man, and you've had lunch with him, right? Or maybe drinks, or
Drinks.
Maybe he poured the beer out?
No.
Okay.
It was in another lifetime.
Okay.
But yeah, we did.
Yeah, he has.
We went for drinks.
Yeah, maybe he was about that age when you. That's a really old photo of him, but. So Robert Bellow is a renowned sociologist and social critic, really. He was critical of societies that are over-reliant on procedural justice because he believed them to be neglectful of a shared morality, to lead to social fragmentation and a weakened civic engagement, because it focuses on me over us. I think we're seeing that right now.
Yep.
Across the board, from large corporations, law firms, universities, and even between individual citizens, that the driving question seems to be, what's in it for me? Rather than, how will this impact all of us? A large part of our division right now is that people are driven by zero-sum thinking. If you win, I lose. Media firms and universities have capitulated to threats from a bully because they want to protect their bottom line. And how powerful would it have been for large conglomerates like that to band together around a shared interest of free speech, regardless of agreement, but around free speech and critical thought instead of fear? The church even, I think, instead of being a place where we can wrestle and question and grapple and grieve with life's biggest questions, bends toward the culture of exclusion and individualism. It's afraid to rock the boat. And frankly, the boat is rocked. And we need to anchor down and kind of deal with that. There's a famous line that's often attributed to scholar and critic Cornel West, that justice is what love looks like in public. And I think we can safely say that that sentiment might actually belong to Jesus. Justice without love is anemic, and love without justice is too soft. Christ-like compassion is fierce in that mama bear type of way. And what wouldn't we do to protect our babies? To protect the vulnerable, the disenfranchised, the lost, and the outcast. I think it's time, y'all, to gather them to our bosom, to really go to work and tend to the pain of the world. I'll end my part with the opening paragraph to the book, The Separation of Church and State, state. It's written by the comedian John Fugelsang. I got it, and so far, love it. But the very opening paragraph is this. Jesus was a peaceful, radically nonviolent revolutionary who wasn't American and never spoke English, who hung around lepers, hookers, and crooks, never sought tax cuts for the rich Nazarenes, was anti-wealth and anti-death penalty, anti-public prayer too. See Matthew 6:5. Never asked lepers for a copay, never called poor people lazy, never even slightly anti-gay, never mentioned abortion, supported paying taxes, and was a long-haired community organizing authority questioning anti-slut-shaming, brown-skinned, Palestinian, unarmed, homeless Jew. But only if you believe what's actually in the Bible.
It's such an absolute privilege to be with you
You
like this.
too. I love you.
I love you too. And I hope you all realize that what you just heard is powerful anima teaching about compassion. Fierce mamas. Well, we need that firm compassion.
It's love with boundaries, you know. We need that.
I think the verses that we read earlier from Eugene Peterson's version of the Beatitudes probably constitute some of the most beautiful and revolutionary teachings in the scriptures. As I said, we're calling it a theological earthquake, if heard correctly. And they were Jesus' way of saying that whoever is in alignment with what he saw as God's way was on the right track, even if it didn't seem that way. So I'll invoke Sarah Grant again. It isn't the way because Jesus followed it. Jesus followed it because it's the way to be. And it's not sectarian, it's not Christian, it's not Jewish, it's fully human. As Rohr said, you are who you are in God, no more, no less. And that's what these Beatitudes are trying to teach. Not that we embrace that by ourselves individualistically, but that we see each other that way. Both the church at the time, there was no church, but the religious institution at the time, and the government at that time had told people that God was on the side of the wealthy, the pure, and that they were the elect. And Jesus flipped that script. And he announced this counter-narrative, that God's blessings rested on the people that the world overlooks, marginalizes, and shames. The poor, the mourning, the meek, the ones who ache for justice, and the ones who get hurt trying to make the world that way. So through the ages, the church has made the Beatitudes about personal piety. And for Jesus, they were communal, they were political. So the world that Jesus envisioned was not one based on violence, dominance, or merit, but one based on grace, humility, and a deep longing for justice. These teachings are not merit badges you earn. They're an invitation to see the world in a different way, and all upon the world, all creatures, not just humans, and the world itself. They are a compass we can use on the wayless way. They're Jesus' way of saying, I see you. God sees you, sees your pain, your longing, your love, your courage. They matter, and you matter. They're not easy teachings. They run counter to the logic of empire, consumerism, nationalism, and sometimes, more often than not, and this is sad, they run counter to the teachings of the church. We can't prove them, but we can embody them, and by embodying them, we can make them true. And if more people did embody them, I think we would experience an earthquake. The shaking up that might just lead to the healing we need. And I hope that's what these teachings can contribute to. So no matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this, you carry precious cargo, so see you here next week.